My name is Encilay Adrian. Today I'm going to report about Correctional Administration Module 4. So in Module 4, I will discuss the institutional-based correction, their structures, management, standards, programs, and services in the Philippines. The two system-based approaches to corrections, the Bureau of Corrections or Republic Act 10575, custody, security, and control of prisoners, care and treatment of prisoners, release of prisoners, good conduct time allowance, or in short, GCTA, Prohibited Act subject to disciplinary actions, BGMP or Republic Act 6975, Republic Act 9263, treatment of special needs or unusual offenders, emergency plans, movements or transfer of prisoners or detainees, privileges of detainees and sentenced prisoners, the Regional Rehabilitation Centers for Youth, the Child and Youth Welfare Code, the Death Row, and lastly, the rule of the writ of amparo. So, institutional-based correction. Institutional-based correction means that the individual is placed in a prison or jail, which means they are housed in a secure correctional facility. So it's mean that from the word institutional, so mga buildings like prisons and jail where a convicted person of a crime is housed in a secure correctional facility. Institutional correction facilities include kaning prisons and jail. So prison are state or federal housing facilities that confine convicted felons with sentence typically longer than year. Kung din sa jails are administered by the local law enforcement officers and hold those with shorter sentence kumpara dito sa prison. Usually, ang jail is 1 year or less and those awaiting trial. So, the Philippine correction system has two approaches in treating criminal offenders. So, the institution-based treatment program and community-based treatment program. So, institutional-based treatment program, it is a process or result of a formal training in school or classroom intended to shape the mind and attitude of prisoners towards good living upon the release. So kaning sa institutional based treatment dinhi mura siya anang tudluan ang mga prisoners mga person convicted of a crime unsay mga possible skills nila, unsay mga possible na mga pwede nilang gamon dira sa facility para pud sila magamit din para po dili sila ng pabigat sa atong gobyerno. So pag-inform ni sila kung unsa ilang pwedeng mabuhat like kanang sa lively sa mga person sa mga lalaki pwede sila mga furniture, sa mga babae pwede maghimog mga wave, magtahi. So dinhi house ang mga gi-shape ang mind sa mga prisoners sa ang ilang attitude dinhi sa institutional based treatment program. So the institution based correction program has 3 levels. These are the national, provincial, and sub-provincial jails, the district, city, and municipal jails. So next is community-based treatment program. It refers to a specific integrated model of treatment for people affected by drug use and dependence in the community, which provides a continuum of care from outreach and low threshold services through detoxification and stabilization to aftercare and interrogation, including maintenance pharmacotherapy. So ang community-based treatment program, gina-counsel ang mga drug users or mga drug abuse ay mga drug user para dili na sila maingong lost in touch sa reality, dili sila maingong mga buang. Gina-counsel sila sa mga staff sa correctional administration para po ng ingong dili na sila anang ma-change ilang mind na dili na sa mo commit pag any crime or dili na sa mo buhat ani ng butanga na mag-use og illegal drugs o for them na paggawas nila sa community, mahimo na sang mga responsible people, mga dili na sila ingong somebody na to harm kapwa nila mga tao, o dili na pod sila ingon na mabuang aning pag-use og drugs. Gina-counsel ni sila para ingon na dili sila imong ng ilang ma-change ang ilang mind to be a good person in the community. So the community-based treatment program has probation, parole, conditional pardon, and release on recognized as a mode of release. So probation is in a criminal law, it is a period of supervision over an offender ordered by the court, often instead of incarceration. In some jurisdiction, the term probation applies only to community sentence such as suspended sentence. Ang parole is a form of is a conditional release of prisoner before they complete their sentence. Paroled prisoners are supervised by a public official, usually called a parole officer. If paroled prisoners violate the condition of the release, they may be returned to prison. Conditional pardon is a pardon is conditional when its effectiveness depends on fulfillment of a condition by the offender. The Constitution gives the presidents the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the state. This power to grant a pardon includes the power to grant a conditional pardon. So release and recognition as a mode of release. Recognizance is a mode of securing the release of any person in custody or detention for the commission of an offense who is unable to post bail due to abject poverty. So that's the community-based treatment program. So next is institutional-based approach. Presently, there are 3 executive departments that supervise and control the numerous institutional facilities nationwide, which provide incarceration and rehabilitation to offenders. These are Department of Justice, Department of Interior and Local Government, Department of Social Welfare and Development. So, Department of Justice is under the Executive Department of Philippine Government, responsible for upholding the rule of law in the Philippines. It is the government's principal law agencies serving on its legal counsel and prosecution arm. So, ang Department of Justice, which take care of the national prisoners. Next is Department of Interior and Local Government. Abbreviated as the ILG, is the executive department of the Philippine government responsible for promoting peace and order, ensuring public safety, and strengthening local government capability aimed towards the effective delivery of basic services to the citizenry. So the ILG, they were the one to take care of the municipal, city, and provincial prisoners. Next is the Department of Local Welfare and Development. The Philippines Department of Social Welfare and Development is the executive department of the Philippines government responsible for the protection of social welfare of rights of Filipinos and to promote the social development. They are the one to take care of sentenced youthful offenders. Under the DOG, the offenses that are tasked to carry out the mission of correction rest with the Bureau of Correction or BUCOR, the Board of Pardon and Parole, and the Parole and Probation Administration. So the Board of Pardon and Parole or BPP release prisoners on parole and recommends the grant of presidential pardons. The Parole and Probation Administration supervises the rehabilitation of parolees as well as probationers. So the Parole and Probation Administration is an agency of the Philippine government under the Department of Justice responsible for providing less costly alternative to imprisonment of first-time offenders who are likely to respond to individualized community-based treatment programs. The Board of Parole and Pardon recommends to the presidents the prisoners who are qualified for parole, pardon, or other form of executive clemency. The PPA, on the other hand, exercises general supervision over all parolees and probations and promotes the corrections and rehabilitation of offenders outside the prison's institution. Under the DILG are the BGMP and PLGU. The BGMP take charge of district, city, and municipal jails nationwide, while the provincial jails are operated by the provincial local government units located in 10 sites nationwide. So next is community-based approach. Not all convicted offenders have to serve their sentence behind bars. Some are allowed to stay in the community subject to condition imposed by the government. They are either granted probation, parole, conditional pardon, and recognizance. So this approach insists that people targeted for humanitarian assistance have the right to participate in making decisions that affect their lives, as well as a right to information and transparency from those responsible for providing assistance. Example of services in community the family may refer include CCC in home, local mental health, family support programs offered by the state, school-based services, psychiatric evaluation, psychological testing, special education services, domestic violence programs, and lastly, substance abuse treatment. So that was the community-based approach. So next is the institutionalized treatment program. So ang correctional administration naggama sila mga klase-klaseng mga programs able sa mga inmates na matagaan silang chance na dili lang i-punish sila sa prisuan but to rehabilitate them through sa mga program na ilang ipanghimo para po sila ang mga inmate ma-educate for in case na ato sa community pwede nilang magamit ang mga skill na gipangtudlo nila sa mga correctional administration staff. So one of this ang sa institutional treatment program is educational treatment program. The educational program of correctional institution is one of the most important phases of the treatment and training of prisoners. There is no common plan of educational for all. Even for those who are serving lengthy, even natural life or sentences, prison education has profound and often life-changing benefits. There is a substantial reduction in violence and disciplinary infraction among those involved in prison education. Prison education also breaks down racial and ethnic barriers that are often a cause of tensions and violence in prisons. Significantly improves relationships between staff members and incarcerated, and dramatically enhance the prisoner's self-esteem. The impact of education goes well beyond the walls of prisons themselves, extending into the home communities to incarcerated prisoners. So, next is the classes of prison education. One of these is general and academic education. The eradication of literacy among prisoners is one of the best contribution that the correctional system can offer to society. Next is vocational education. The vocational education program is usually geared into institutional maintenance work and prisons industries project to provide them prisoners necessary skills after their release. As I said earlier na ang mga programs na gipanghatag sa correctional institution para po nila magamit in the times for them to release. Kay sa correctional administration diri sa Pilipinas, dili lang gipang deter, punish ang mga inmates dito sa prisuhan, but to rehabilitate them para magamit sila sa community someday. Then courses may include radio mechanics, auto mechanics, horticultures, shoemaking, tailoring, and carpentry and electronics. So that was the educational program. Next is work program. These are programs conducted to change behavior and moral by training prisoners for useful occupation. So kaning sa work program, din na sila itudlo sa mga pwedeng mga skills nila, like sa mga I said earlier na for sa boys, kung pwede sila sa mowing or sa welding o sa mga furnitures, dinhi pwede nila magamit ang skills. Kay ang correctional administration naghatag sila program for them na to learn, na i-practice nila pud kung unsa ang pagbuhat aning sa mga mowing, especially sa mga boys na inmates. So dinhi magamit nila ang ilang skills, kung especially ang inmates na nice skills about sa mowing, furniture, or welding. So classification of prison work programs. Educational assignments. Prisoners may be assigned to either general education, vocational, or physical education. 2. Agricultural and industry assignment. Kung like sa mga magtanom-tanom, sa pwede sila nang magplant og mga ng mga bear fruits, like ang mga mga babayi, pwede kay sila pwede po ang mga lalaki. So maintenance assignments. This assignment involve labor related to care and upkeeping of institutional properties. Then lastly, unassignable. Prisoners who are nearly to leave the institution awaiting transfer, those in disciplinary status, and those who are chronological ill with mental disabilities. So next is religious service in prison. Chaplain is the most important persons in a rehabilitated setup of correctional institutions. It is the chaplain administrator claim, who points to the prisoners their relationship to God and their fellow men, and who may by work example leads them most effectively toward complete rehabilitation. So ang correctional administration dili lang yung gipunish ang mga prisoner, gipang-deter sila, but na gikuan po sila sa nang ma-touch sila sa ma-take touch sila sa God, para i-change ang ilang mindset na dili na sila makabuhat og crime. So ang correctional administration gihatagan gud og tsansa na ang mga prisoners na mo kuan sila mag-pray, praying sila, nang i-counseling sila sa mga mission, mga missionaries, like mga Mormons, mga hilig kay na mag-atag sa mga prisuhan para i-educate kabayan sa God, kung nganong gipang na dili na nila dapat buhaton ang mga di maayong buluhaton sa community or sa society. So functions of the chaplain: conduct of sacramental ministry, conduct religious instruction, ministry to inmate families and related concerned person, ministerial service to the staff and the operational personnel, interpretation ministry to the community. Then administrative function of the chaplain, which is member of the RDC or Regional Diagnostic Center staff, member of the classification committee, then lastly render evaluation. So next program is recreational program. Recreational programs are important part of the rehabilitation program. A good prison administrator should provide wholesome, healthy activities for men confined in his institution. So kaning recreational program ginahatag ni sa correctional administration para ang mga inmate dili sila mga board sa ilang mga quarters or sa prisuhan, para po dili sila mayong mabuang dito sa prisuhan kay wala example katong mga gibartolina na wala gud sila kay makitang suga. So para pud nang mingong nang matabangan ang pag-rehabilitate sa mga prisoners, dapat i-kuan pa nila mga recreational program sa aning mga basketball, soccer, football, mga ingana para pod dili sila ma-bored or dili sila ingong isamutan nimo kabuang ang mga prisoners. Kung prisoner na buang na musamot na gud na siya kabuang, kung imura na siyang ipasagdan dira sa prisuhan. So it should be kuan sila ihalubilo sa mga kuan nila sa mga ubang inmates para kuan po sila ma-socialize. Kay syempre tawar pud sila, kinahanglan po sila ani mga butanga. So next is library service. The prison library plays an important role in the involvement of prisoners in practical and cultural aspect of social living. So next, health and medical service. The medical and health requirements of prisoners include mental and physical examination, observation, diagnosis, and treatment of patients, immunization and protection of inmate population, as well as the stop against hazards, visiting prisoners in segregation section, sanitary inspection, consultation with culinary and other officials, and participation in training, classification, disciplinary, and other program. So important yung kaning health and medical service sa correctional administration or correction institution kay what if kanang naay mga ubang prisoner na nagdala og sakit or naslay virus, kuan na ba kaya ang mga virus ron, so it should be na gina-check guni sila, gina-diagnose or gina-check sa mga doctors, ang mga expert ani. Then sa kuan po sa ilang mga pagkaon dapat gina-check pod kay kung nanay mga dili sanitize ang ilang mga pagkaon, ay posibleng cause of death tolls o sa ilang mga designated quarters sa mga prisoners dapat ginasanitize po na kay haron kay dira ba na sila nagpundo nagpuyo, so it should be sanitized kay para if kung may person na may virus para ma-aware ang mga ay dili sila matakdan sa usa ka inmate na may virus. So it should be naay mga medical services or health and medical services sa correctional institution. Next is treatment of special needs or unusual offenders. Number 1 is female. The female quarters dorm should be separated from male. No male inmate should be allowed to enter the female dorm. Only work suitable or their age and physical condition should be assigned to female inmate. So it should be separated ang female o male of inmates kay there's a possibility na kung imong i-segregate both female and male sa same na dorm, pwedeng ma-rape victim ang mga female ani. So next is drug users, defendant, and addict. Drug users should be segregated from the inmates, especially during the withdrawal period. Maintain close supervision to suicide or self-prevention attempt to commit suicide and self-motivation. Conduct a regular search of the inmates' quarters and maintain constant alertness to prevent the smuggling of narcotics and other dangerous drugs. So, high alert ang pagbantay ani sa mga drug users, defendant, or an addict kay kani sila sila mga suicide attempt or suicide na pwede ay mo-suicide dayon. Then it should be high surveillance nila ani supervision kay kani sila mga drug addict, ginampangita gud nila ning mga drugs, so there's a possibility na mag-smuggle og narcotics sa ilang mga dorms and other dangerous drugs. Next is alcoholics. Place alcoholics in a quarter separates from other inmates and maintain closer supervision to guards. Maintain suicide attempt. Any symptoms of abnormal behavior should be reported immediately to the jail physician or warden. exercise close supervision to guard against the smuggling of liquors and other intoxicating drinks to product containing alcohol. So high alert po ang pagbantayan ng mga alcoholic inmates kay example mag-smuggle na smuggling sila og mga liquor des dorms. So kaning mga tawhana mo offer ni sila sa mga officers na nagbantay nila nya dili ba tanang mga officers na kalagmitan madani gyud sa mga panulti aning mga alcoholic na mag-inom ta na mauwat nila ba. So it should be in a high alert surveillance kaning sa mga alcoholic inmates. Next is mentally ill. The mentally ill should be under the close supervision of jail medical personnel. Place the mentally ill in a separate cells and special restraint room provided for violent cases. Supervision to guard against suicide attempt and violent attack on others. The mentally ill should be transferred as soon as feasible or mental institution for proper psychiatric treatment. High alert pa ng pagbantayan nila kay kaning mga mentally ill inmates kay nanas mga uban na mga paranoid or psychotic behavior na sila makita na wala takakita na sila mga nadungog na dili madungog na kuan kini sa mga suicide attempt kay ay mga suicide kay ginadukdok ba nila ni ilang mga ulo sa semento or sa mga bar sa ilang dorms. So imbis dili death penalty ang ilang sentence, mahimo ng death penalty kay magpakamatay sa ilang kaugalingon. Next is sex deviates. Homosexuals should be segregated immediately to prevent them from influencing other inmates or being maltreated or abused by other inmates. Sex deviates should be separated from other inmates for close supervision control. Next is suicidal inmates. The suicidal inmates should be given close and constant supervision. Search their quarters and premises for tools, materials that can be used for suicide. They should be subjected to frequent strip search. So, same rin isa sa mga mentally ill na mag-commit din og suicide para dili nila buhaton, kailangan ay high surveillance, high alertness sa mga officers na nagbantay aning ng mga inmate. Next is the handicapped, aged, and infirm. This inmate should be housed separately and close supervised to protect them from maltreatment or abuse by other inmates. A special treatment should be given to these inmates who shall be required to work in accordance with their physical capabilities for their own upkeep and to maintain the sanitation for their quarters and surrounding. Then lastly, non-Philippine citizen inmates. The warden shall report in writing to the Bureau of Immigration and the respective embassies of the detained foreigners the following: name of foreigners, name of jail, nationality, member of alien certificate of registration if any, sex and age, offense charge, case number, and court branch. Next, the first juvenile court. The first juvenile court, which was established in Chicago in 1899, was based on the principle long used in England. Although England put up her own juvenile court some year later when the Child Act of 1908 was passed. So, nagigihimo na mga court sa mga youthful offenders kay dili tanang mga bata na ilang gihimo na crime. Juvenile justice and welfare system refers to a system dealing with the children at risk and children in conflict with the law, which provide child-appropriate proceedings including programs and services for prevention, diversion, rehabilitation, reintegration, and aftercare to ensure their normal growth and development. So it should be nang ginalahi gyud ang mga ang pag-deter ang pagpunish sa mga youthful offenders kay mga bata paguna they still not wala pa sila na fully grown, basin gigamit ra sila sa ubang tawo to commit a crime kay daghang cases diri sa Pilipinas na mga bata sa in conflict with the law na sila may nang-gamiton sa mga anang conspiracy na crime na sila may mohong accessories na pagpangawat sa mga tao niya ang ilang kuan mga bata. So ginakuan ang mga child with conflict with the law lahi gud sila na mga ilahi sila pag deter dili pareha sa pag deter pagpunish sa mga youth, sa mga offenders na mga grown enough. Next, rehabilitation services. The purpose is to change inmates' pattern of criminal behavior and reform them into a law-abiding and productive citizens through implementation of rehabilitation in jails. So ang mga inmates dili lang sila gi-deter, gipunish sa prisuhan, but to rehabilitate them for them sa ma-release sila sa community na nausab na ilang mindset, ilang perception sa ilang life na dili na sila mo commit pa og although dili na to mapunggan na dili na sila maka-commit og crime, but to lessen na sa ilang attitude to commit to harm other peoples to their sa society and community. Next is the treatment programs. The treatment of inmates shall be focused on the provision of services designed to encourage them to return to the fold of justice and enhance their self-respect, dignity, and sense of responsibility as follow: provision for the basic needs of inmates, health services, education and skills training, religious services, guidance and counseling services, recreation, sport and entrancement, work programs such as livelihoods project, visitation services, and meal services. Paras ni kanina as I discussed earlier, ang mga needed ning mga treatment programs sa mga convicted of a crime kay para magamit sila ay para dili lang sila i-deter and punishment sa prison, but igamit pod ang ilang mga skills or tudluan sila sa mga any livelihood programs para in case magawa sila sa community, i-release sila sa prisuan na sila yung mga trabaho na pwede nilang masudlan, dili na sila makahuna-una og pagbuhat pa og crime or mga illegal doings na pwede nilang buhaton. Next is the Reception and Diagnostic Center or RDC. In line with the latest approach to treatment in individuals or casework method, it is necessary that prisoner must undergo a diagnostic examination, study and observation of the purpose of determining the program of treatment and training best suited for their needs and the institution to which they should be transferred. This process takes place in reception and diagnostic centers within the first 60 days of their commitment to prison. An act strengthening the Bureau of Corrections or BUCOR and providing funds. It is the policy of state to promote the general welfare and safeguard the basic rights of every prisoner incarcerated in our national penitentiary. Next, Republic Act number 10592. Whenever lawfully justified, the Director of Bureau of Corrections, the Chief of Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, and the Warden of the Provincial, District, Municipal, or City Jail shall grant allowances for good conduct such as allowances once granted shall not be revoked. Next, Republic Act number 9263, an act providing for the professionalization of the Bureau of Fire Protection and the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, amending certain provisions of Republic Act number 6975, providing funds thereof and for other purposes. Next, Presidential Decree number 603, Philippine Child Youth Welfare. The code shall be known as a Child and Youthful Welfare Code. It shall apply to persons below 21 years of age, except those emancipated in accordance with law. Child or minor or youth as used in this code shall refer to such person. Next, the death row. The death row, also known as condemned row, is a place in a prison that houses inmates awaiting execution after being convicted of a capital crime and sentenced to death. The term is also used figuratively to describe the state of awaiting execution or being on death row, even in places with no special facility or separate unit for condemned inmate exists. Death row means a row of prison cells for prisoners awaiting execution. So next, the rule of the writ of amparo. The petition for a writ of amparo is a remedy available for any persons whose right to life, liberty, and security is violated or threatened with violation by unlawful act or omission of a public official or employee or of private individual or entity. The writ shall cover extra-legal killings and enforce disappearance or threats thereof. Section 2. Who may file? The petition may file by aggrieved party or by any qualified persons or entity in the following order. Any member of immediate family, namely the spouse, children, and parents of the aggrieved party. Any ascendants, descendants, or collateral relative of the aggrieved party within the fourth civil degree of consanguinity or affinity in default of those mentioned in a preceding paragraph, or any concerned citizens, organizations, associations, or institutions if there is no known member of the immediate family or relative of the aggrieved party. So that's all my report about Correctional Administration Module 4. Thank you.